We now know what caused the death of NASCAR legend Kyle Busch. Today, his race car, rebranded to the number 33, took to the track at the Charlotte Motor Speedway with a teammate behind the wheel.
Kyle Busch built a career on speed, toughness, and a fearless attitude that made him one of NASCAR's most unforgettable champions. Fans saw the victories, the rivalries, and the moments that made him larger than life. But behind the roaring engines and race day excitement, a shocking story was quietly unfolding. One filled with hidden warning signs, unexpected health struggles, unanswered questions, and heartbreaking twists few people saw coming. What really happened in the days leading up to the tragedy that stunned NASCAR and left millions in disbelief? This is the devastating story. The champion fighting a hidden battle. For many years, Kyle Busch seemed almost impossible to beat. On the racetrack, he stood out as one of NASCAR's most aggressive and determined drivers. Every time the green flag dropped, he brought speed, skill, and a level of confidence that made him a constant threat to everyone else on the grid. He didn't just race to participate, he raced to win. And more often than not, he did exactly that. Over time, Kyle Busch built a powerful name for himself in the world of motorsports. He collected race wins, championship titles, and record-breaking performances that placed him among the greatest drivers the sport has ever seen. Fans watched him push his car to the limit, taking bold risks that others would never dare to attempt. Whether people loved him or criticized his driving style, no one could deny his talent. He became a true symbol of determination, speed, and fearless competition. To the outside world, everything looked perfect. The spotlight followed him, the crowds cheered his name, and victory after victory added to his growing legacy. He appeared strong, focused, and completely in control of his career. The image was clear. Kyle Busch was at the top of his game, living the dream of every racer who ever stepped into a car. But far away from the noise of the engines and the excitement of race weekends, something different was slowly beginning to happen. Behind the scenes, a quiet struggle was forming, one that most people had no idea about. At first, it didn't seem serious. It looked like something small, something that could be managed with time and care. Just a minor health concern, nothing that would raise alarms or change the course of his life. However, as days turned into weeks, the situation did not improve. Instead, it began to grow more complicated and more worrying. What once felt harmless started to show signs of becoming something far more serious. The early warning signs were easy to overlook, but they were there, quietly building in the background while life on the track continued as usual. Slowly, the reality began to sink in. This was no longer just a small issue that could be ignored. It was turning into something much bigger, something that would demand attention, strength, and resilience in ways no one expected. And as the pressure of racing continued on one side of his life, a very different kind of battle was beginning on the other side, one that would change everything. Behind the bravery of Kyle Busch lies an illness that has been slowly shaping his inner world over time. But was there ever a moment when he openly spoke about what he was going through? Was his speaking up treated as a medical emergency, or simply dismissed as normal fatigue from an athlete pushing through a demanding sport? Let's find out. The Watkins-Glen radio call. Sometimes, the smallest moments are the ones that only make sense after everything has already changed. At the time, they look normal, even forgettable. But later, when people look back, those same moments suddenly feel heavier, like warning signs that no one fully understood. During a race weekend at Watkins Glen, Kyle Busch had one of those moments. It was supposed to be just another busy day in a long season of racing. The cars were fast, the pressure was high, and every driver was pushing their body and mind to the edge. Nothing about the day seemed unusual at first glance. Over the team radio, Kyle Busch suddenly asked for a doctor, saying he would need a shot. It sounded calm and routine in the middle of a high-pressure race, where drivers often battle pain, stress, and exhaustion. In motorsports, pushing through discomfort is normal, so no one saw it as something serious at the time. It seemed like just another tough racer doing what it takes to keep going. To most people listening, it sounded like just another tough competitor doing what racers often do, finding a way to keep going no matter how uncomfortable things get. There was no panic, no big reaction, and no clear reason for concern. The race continued, and the focus quickly shifted back to speed, strategy, and competition. But looking back now, that moment feels different. What seemed small at the time starts to look like something more meaningful. A quiet signal, a glimpse of something happening beneath the surface that few people could see. It is often like that in sports, where athletes are expected to be strong all the time, even when their bodies are sending out warning signs. Kyle Busch has always been known for pushing through limits. He is the kind of driver who refuses to give up easily, even when things get uncomfortable. That is part of what made him successful. But it also means that small signs of struggle can easily be ignored or brushed aside by fans, by teams, and sometimes even by the athletes themselves. In moments like that at Watkins Glen, everything appears routine on the outside. But later, people begin to wonder if it was actually the beginning of something more serious. Was it just a normal race day issue? Or was it the first quiet hint of a bigger problem slowly building up? At the time, no one truly knew what was happening. But looking back, that moment now feels heavy and unforgettable. Not for what was seen, but for the hidden truth it may have quietly held underneath. Kyle Busch called for medical attention in the middle of a race. Yet it was treated as normal fatigue in a high-intensity sport. But did he stop racing because of his illness? Or continue showing up despite it? And what does his decision to keep competing say about NASCAR's sensitivity and response to the well-being of its drivers? Let's uncover the details. Racing through illness. Even while not feeling his best, Kyle Busch did what he has always been known for doing. He kept racing. No matter what was going on behind the scenes, he still showed up, still climbed into the car, and still went out onto the track with full focus. For him, racing was not something he easily stepped away from. It was part of who he was, and stopping was never the first option. What made it even more surprising was that he didn't just participate. He still performed at a high level. Even while dealing with uncomfortable symptoms, he managed to stay competitive against the best drivers in NASCAR. Lap after lap, he pushed through the pain and stayed in the fight, showing the same intensity that had defined his entire career. To many people watching closely, it felt like another example of his strong mindset and refusal to back down, no matter the situation. Among fellow drivers, this was nothing new in one sense. Kyle Busch has always been known as someone who races with full commitment. He is aggressive, focused, and willing to push himself beyond normal limits if it means staying competitive. That kind of attitude is part of what helped him build such a successful career. In racing, mental strength often matters just as much as physical ability, and Kyle has always had both in large amounts. But at the same time, his decision to keep racing while feeling unwell also sparked deeper thoughts within the NASCAR world. It made people start asking questions that don't always have easy answers. How far should a driver go when their body is not at 100%? At what point does determination become something risky instead of something inspiring? And should athletes be expected to keep pushing no matter what, just because they can? For fans, it was even harder to fully understand. On one hand, they admired his toughness and commitment. Seeing a driver refuse to give up, even when things are difficult, is something many people respect deeply. It shows heart, discipline, and a strong love for the sport. But on the other hand, it also raised concerns. If someone has to push that hard just to keep going, what does that say about what they are dealing with? The situation created a mix of admiration and confusion. People were impressed by his strength, but also unsure about what it might mean in the bigger picture. And as time went on, more attention shifted toward what was really happening behind the scenes. beyond the race results and the finish lines. Despite his illness, Kyle Busch continued to show up and compete. But could it be that the pressure to stay on track outweighs any reason to step back, no matter their condition? And what fears or expectations push drivers to keep going even when they are not fully well? Now, let's explore the hidden pressure drivers feel that fans can't see. Behind the helmet. Behind every helmet, there is a human story that most people never fully see. On television, fans see the speed, the crashes, the celebrations, and the heartbreaks. They see the results, the rankings, and the highlights. But what they do not always see is the pressure that sits quietly on every driver's shoulders long before the race even begins. In NASCAR, the pressure is constant. Every race matters. Every lap counts. Every decision can change a season. Drivers are not just competing for one weekend, they are fighting for points, contracts, reputation, and their place in the sport. One bad result can shift everything, while one strong finish can open new doors. Because of that, every opportunity feels important, and no one wants to give up their seat, even for a moment. Over time, fellow drivers have openly admitted something many fans do not always realize. Most athletes in the sport continue racing even when they are not at their best. Pain, sickness, stress, and exhaustion are often treated as things to manage quietly rather than reasons to stop. In a world where competition is so tight, stepping away can feel dangerous, not just physically, but professionally. There is always the fear of missing out. Missing one race can mean losing momentum. Losing momentum can mean falling behind. And falling behind in a sport like NASCAR can quickly change how a driver is seen by teams, sponsors, and even fans. The seat in the car is not just a place to sit. It is something that can be lost if someone else takes advantage of the opportunity. Because of this, many drivers learn to push through discomfort, even when their bodies are telling them to slow down. They learn to stay focused no matter what is happening behind the scenes. And they learn to keep quiet about struggles that might make them seem weak in a world that rewards toughness. This is where Kyle Busch's situation began to feel like more than just one driver's personal challenge. It was no longer only about one moment or one race. It became part of a wider conversation about what athletes go through when no one is watching. It raised questions about how much pressure is too much, and how often drivers feel forced to choose between their health and their careers. Suddenly, what looked like a single story started reflecting something much larger. It became a reminder that behind every helmet is a person dealing with pressure that fans rarely see, but that shapes everything about how they race, how they live, and how far they are willing to push themselves to stay in the game. Fellow drivers have admitted that many athletes continue competing through discomfort because stepping away is never easy. But how long can someone ignore their health when it demands attention? And if a driver refuses to step away when necessary, how severe could the consequence be? Let's uncover the emotional details. From the track to a medical emergency, as preparations were underway for yet another race weekend, things took an unexpected and worrying turn that no one around him was prepared for. What had started as a quiet concern suddenly escalated into something far more serious, changing the mood completely. The calm focus that usually surrounds race preparation was replaced with confusion and fear as new details began to surface. Reports later confirmed that Kyle Busch began experiencing severe and alarming symptoms. It was not just general discomfort or fatigue anymore. The situation reportedly involved serious breathing problems, including shortness of breath that made even simple moments difficult. On top of that, there were claims that he began coughing up blood, a sign that immediately raised major concern among those closest to him. At that point, the decision was made to get him medical attention as quickly as possible. Instead of thinking about race strategy, practice laps, or car setup, the focus shifted entirely to his health and safety. He was transported for medical care, marking a sudden and frightening pause in what was supposed to be just another competitive weekend in NASCAR. For fans hearing the news, it was almost impossible to process. Just days before, Kyle Busch had still been doing what he was known for, getting into the car, racing hard, and competing at a high level. There had been no clear public sign that something this serious was developing behind the scenes. To many people, it felt like everything had changed overnight. What once looked like a mild, ongoing health issue soon turned into something far more serious and alarming. It could no longer be ignored or handled just by pushing through with strength and determination. The reality became clear. It had grown into a major health scare that required urgent attention, proper care, and a complete change in how it was being faced. Inside the NASCAR world, shock spread fast as drivers, teams, and fans struggled to understand how everything changed so quickly. One moment, he was deep in race preparations, fully focused on competition. Next, he was suddenly rushed for medical attention, and the entire atmosphere shifted, turning excitement into worry and leaving everyone searching for answers and confusion everywhere. It was a reminder of how quickly life can take an unexpected turn, even for someone known for strength and endurance. What looked like a small issue at first had now become something much more serious, leaving the entire racing world stunned, concerned, and waiting for answers about what would come next. Kyle Busch experienced severe medical symptoms before being transported for urgent medical care on the verge of another race. But would he survive this time, or was the situation too severe to control? And what would people make of the entire situation? Now, let's delve into the heartbreaking turning point, when the engines fell silent. In just a short time, everything shifted in a way no one could have fully prepared for. The world of NASCAR, known for its noise, speed, and fierce competition, suddenly grew quiet in a very different way. One of its most recognizable and successful drivers of his generation was no longer part of the racing scene. The change did not feel gradual or expected. It felt sudden, heavy, and difficult to accept. Across different racetracks, the mood changed almost immediately. Tributes began to appear everywhere. Fans, teams, and officials showed their respect in different ways, turning ordinary race weekends into moments of remembrance. Silence replaced the usual roar of engines for brief moments, as entire crowds paused to honor a name that had become deeply connected to the sport. It was no longer just about racing. It was about loss. Inside the paddock, fellow competitors struggled to find the right words. These were drivers who had raced side by side with him, fought wheel to wheel at high speed, and shared years of competition and respect. Yet even for them, the reality was hard to describe. Some spoke quietly, others simply stayed silent, unable to fully express what the moment meant. It was clear that this was not just the loss of a rival, but of someone who had powerfully shaped the sport. As the news spread, Kyle Busch's story quickly became something much larger than numbers on a scoreboard. It was no longer only about wins, championships, or records set on the track. Those achievements still mattered, but they were now part of a bigger picture, one filled with emotion, reflection, and unanswered questions. His journey became a symbol of how quickly things can change, even for those who seem unstoppable. For many people watching from outside the sport, it served as a painful reminder of something often forgotten. Behind the helmets, behind the fame, and behind the success, athletes are still human. They face pressure, stress, and struggles that are not always visible to the public. And sometimes, those hidden battles are far more serious than anything happening in competition. The impact of this moment went beyond racing. It made fans, teams, and even casual viewers think differently about health, pressure, and the cost of constant performance. It raised quite important questions about how much people push themselves to succeed and what might be happening behind the scenes when the cameras are not rolling. In the end, Kyle Busch's story became more than a chapter in NASCAR history. It became a moment of reflection, one that reminded everyone that even the strongest competitors can be fighting battles the world never sees, and that sometimes the most powerful moments in sports are not about winning, but about what is left behind when everything changes. So, what do you think about Kyle Busch's tragedy? Could it push NASCAR to rethink drivers' health and safety policies? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.